Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first Sam Houston State University College of Criminal Justice Entrepreneur Panel. The university now has a Center for Entrepreneurship that's housed in the College of Business Administration, and we are really excited about that. I was sharing with the panel a few minutes ago that when we were first approached about this, I wasn't sure how good a fit it was because a lot of our students go on to become police officers, and usually when police officers get entrepreneurial, indictments flow. So initially I wasn't so sure this was a great fit, but then as we discussed it, we realized we do have some folks who have been quite successful entrepreneurs. One of them, Chris, we're borrowing from another college, but Chris's entrepreneurial efforts have nonetheless been in the criminal justice system. A little bit about Chris. He's a Houston native and criminal defense attorney. He began his career an associate of the famed Richard Racehorse Haynes, who I actually had a chance to see litigate when I was in high school. He's represented notable athletes such as Moses Malone, former Houston Rocket Gary Sheffield, all-star third baseman for the Florida Marlins, and Julio Lugo, former Houston Astro. In 1997, Mr. Tritico was one of the trial lawyers representing Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma City bombing. He's host of Fox 26 Law and frequently featured on Fox 26 TV as well as KTRH News Radio in Houston. I also follow Chris on Facebook, and there is always a pot that he is stirring. So if you need some controversy, there
in
you
your
go.
life.
Nancy Kratzer is also joining us. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Law Enforcement and Police Science in 1979 and is the founder of Nancy K. Investigations. She currently serves as president of that company in Dallas and is a private investigator and security consultant with Sierra Delta. In this position, she's been involved in several major cases featured on television and print media. She served as a federal agent for 33 years, previously employed as the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Dallas, Texas office of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Homeland Security Investigations. Aaron Slater also joins us. He earned his Master of Science in Criminal Justice Management in 2012. In fact, he's one of the last students I actually had as a faculty member here at Sam Houston. He's a veteran of law enforcement, co-creator of the Rosenberg Police Department's Facebook page that has been featured throughout the world. In 2014, he left law enforcement and became an entrepreneur. He founded ACED LLC, a training and consulting company. He travels around the U.S. teaching in police agencies. He also founded Relentless Defender Apparel, which is now the largest online law enforcement themed apparel company in the nation. I have no idea how much money it actually makes, but I strongly suspect we'll be talking with him about scholarship opportunities at some point down the road. I also follow Relentless Defender on Facebook and have to confess I'm probably the one that stirs the pot more there. But we're going to hear a little bit from each of our speakers. I've asked them to each speak for about 10 minutes, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience. So with that, let's begin with Chris.
Thank you, Dean Lyons. Dean Lyons is right. I did not attend this college at Sam Houston. I was a political science major. My goal in life was always twofold. First, I was going to go to law school, which I did, and after a while, I was always intent on running for political office. And as I got older and politics became a blood sport, I decided I didn't want to put my family through that, so I started working for television and radio and decided that it was more fun to talk about them than become one of them and be talked about. And that's what Dean Lyons is talking about when he talks about my Facebook page. I'm a regular agitator of people in political life. That's a good way to put it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I attended Sam Houston State from 1979 until 1983 when, rumor has it, I was asked to leave. There's not really any truth to that. I did graduate. I met my wife and married her while we were students here, and 35 plus years later, we're still married with 3 beautiful children who are all now grown and moved out of our house. Well, except one who came back home, but we're trying to kick his ass out now. When I went to law school and graduated, I was working for Racehorse Haynes, who y'all may be too young to know who he was. He passed away about 2 years ago. He was, at the time, the most well-known criminal defense attorney in the United States when I started working for him 2 days after I graduated from high school. And I worked for him from 1979 until 1993, when I left his practice to start my own practice. I did not intend in my life to run my own practice, but when I started my own practice, the Haynes and Fullenwider, the law firm, broke up in 1988. Right after I got my law degree, my wife and I had our first child. I had just gotten out of law school. We had our first child, bought a house, and bought 2 brand new cars because I had this great job with one of the premier law firms in the country. And then 6 months later, the firm split up, and Richard called us into his office, all the associates, and said, here's your paycheck. The firm split up last night. Good luck. And so on Saturday morning, that was Friday, on Saturday morning, I became an entrepreneur. And me and 2 other lawyers, 2 other associates formed our own law firm. And we did that for 6 months when Richard hired us back, and we went back to work for him, and I stayed there till 1993, and I left in 93 and started my own practice, which I've had ever since. The beauty of striking out and having your own business is the freedom that you have to do whatever you want in life. And they're going to talk to you about government service, which I've never done. But they're also going to talk to you about when you leave government service, how you get to make a lot more money and do a lot more things with your life. And that's what I found when I left out on my own and found that you get to do so many more things with your life, and you get to have the freedom to dream and say, I think I'll go this way. I looked up one day and told my wife, and it's a good thing that I have a wife who goes along with all of my stupid ideas. I looked up one day and I said, I think I'm going to start a radio show. And my wife said, okay. And I started working on it, and I got a radio show, and I was on the radio for 10 years. And then that ended, and I said, I think I'm going to go to work for television. And I banged around, and I got to work for television. I still work for Channel 26 in Houston, and I go on 2 days a week. And then I said, about 3 years ago, I said, you know, I'm ready to ratchet this up a little bit, and I'm going to go out to L.A. and pitch some television shows to some producers out there. And my wife said, why not? And so I hired an agent in L.A., and I spent a whole lot of money. And I went out to L.A., and I met with 15 producers. And last summer, I produced a television show for Oxygen called In Defense Of, and we made 4 episodes. All because I said, I want to do it. That's what you get to do when you work for yourself. That's what you get to do when you dare to dream, I can do better in life than what someone tells me I have to do. And that's what you can do when you say, I'll branch out on my own. Those of you who are studying to go into law enforcement, God bless you. But I'm going to tell you what I represent 5 teachers' unions in Houston, about 9,000 teachers. And I represent, every now and then somebody will come in and they've worked for a school district for about, 25 or 35 years, and they have exceeded the maximum number of points that they have to retire. And I look at them and I say, why are you still working for the government? And I'll tell you what I've told every one of them, when you hit your number of points, leave. You've done what they asked you to do. Take your full retirement and do like these 2 did, and they take your retirement and take the money that they were going to give you for the rest of your life and take their benefits they're going to give you the rest of your life and form your own company and go double your income while you're young enough to do it. And dare to dream. That's my story.
Thanks, Chris. A quick question and then an observation. With your involvement with Racehorse Haynes, did you attend the T. Cullen Davis trial?
When I started in '79, I was 18 years old, and they were finishing the last of the Cullen Davis trials. I didn't get to go because I was literally just starting at the firm, and I hadn't ever even entered a courtroom. But I met Cullen Davis several times as that was wrapping up, and I've seen him several times over the years, but I didn't get to attend any of that trial.
Well, I did. My business law class, literally in high school, we did go on a field trip, and that happened to be the trial that was underway. They did explain to us that that was a little bit atypical. We shouldn't base them all on that. The observation I want to make is you'll notice that Chris's entrepreneurial ventures started sort of involuntarily.
Yeah.
And this is something that we see happen a lot. And I think one of the messages there is that when doors close, you don't necessarily know what other doors are going to open. And as you heard, you might have to kick the door open a little bit, but it may be quite a good one. Well, with that, let's turn it over to Nancy. Nancy?
Well, Dean Lyons, I appreciate you allowing me to come today because I have a very soft heart for Sam Houston. To give you a little bit about my background, I'm going to tell you on some concepts that I lived by and how I nurtured my career and was very successful for it. And I want to share those concepts with you to explain what my background's all about. First of all, be true to yourself and do what you love. And select a career path that motivates you and makes you excited to go to work. I was one of the lucky ones. I knew exactly what I wanted to do as a career. I wanted to become a federal agent. And I spent my time in college looking for that opportunity. Sam Houston gave me that opportunity by when I was able to get a co-op with a federal agency. Now, I did that in the late 70s. Now, at the time, I didn't realize to be a federal agent, women were not allowed to be federal agents until the early 1970s. So here I am dreaming of a career that women normally didn't even do. So when I came to Sam Houston in the criminal justice department, in the program, and wanted to be a federal agent, a lot of the professors says, wait a minute, right out of college? No, that's probably not going to happen. You probably maybe have to be a police officer. And I says, tell me no? How can that be? So when I heard about this opportunity for this co-op, I jumped on that opportunity, which is one of these other comments and concepts that I want to let you know. Recognize and act on every opportunity. When I heard about that co-op, I applied. And I thought that there would be a rush of applicants to do that. But it ended up, do you know how many people applied for that co-op? And it happened to me in Dallas with a department called Health, Education, and Welfare. And now it's HHS, Health and Human Services, which they do medical type of investigations. 2 people applied for that co-op. I was one of them. I was lucky that I got selected, but I didn't even know that only 2 people had applied. So I drove up to Dallas from here and met with the special agent in charge and said, pick me, look at me. I took that time and that motivation to do that. And for that, they hired me right when I was still in college and held that job open for me when I graduated. And that started my career on what I loved to do. So I ended up working as a federal agent for 33 years. I started with Health and Human Services. I worked 9 years as an investigator, working medical type investigations. After that, I moved over to U.S. Customs, in which I did a whole variety of investigations, anything from narcotics, child pornography related cases, cyber crimes, money laundering, trade fraud, intellectual property rights, which is counterfeiting, trademarks, copyrights, and even moved up the ladder and went into management. Moved to Los Angeles, was ultimately transferred, which I didn't want to go, to Washington, D.C., became the director of the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center, in which it was the government's response to intellectual property rights enforcement. I was in Washington, D.C. Shortly thereafter, the most horrible thing happened, 9/11. Changed everything. Changed my life. Matter of fact, changed even my career path, because U.S. Customs merged with Immigration and became Department of Homeland Security. And so when I retired in 2010, I was with the Department of Homeland Security. I ultimately got to come back to Dallas, which is my home, and when I left federal service, I was the Deputy Special Agent in charge, which is the second person in charge for my area. I enjoyed my career, and at the time when I retired, it was 2010. 2011, the Super Bowl was going to be played in Dallas at the AT&T Center, where Jerry Jones, had just opened this magnificent stadium. And I was working the Super Bowl on the Homeland Security side because of all the security concerns. And I also, because I was in intellectual property rights, Homeland Security would work counterfeiting, because the NFL does not like people counterfeiting their products with copyrights and trademarks.
Picky.
So when I retired, I said, I want to have an opportunity to do something else. And what that was is I wanted to work the Super Bowl, working with the NFL, combating copyright and trademark violators. Because when Super Bowls occur, a lot of people are counterfeiting whatever teams are playing. And my old office was working the Super Bowl for intellectual property rights on the criminal side. But I wanted to work it with the with the NFL on the civil side. And to do that, I couldn't just say, hey, during my connections with the NFL anyway, with Homeland Security, I had to be licensed as a private investigator. So that's what I did. And that's what started it. So that's when I formed Nancy K. Investigations, to be able to license, to be able to work that. And from that point on, that's how it blossomed. Yes, I retired. Yes, I have a pension. Yes, I'm very comfortable. And when I merged out to do this new job, I don't have to work. I work because I want to work. And I do the cases that I want to work on. So because of my expertise in customs and trade fraud, immigration law, intellectual property rights, and medical field in Medicare and Medicaid, that's what I consult in. So I work with lawyers in the Dallas area, and many times I work with former U.S. attorneys that I had worked cases with and I had connections with when I was working. And I have worked with them to help them on their cases. So I have gone to trial on federal cases. Now I'm no longer on the prosecution side, I'm on the defense side. So if I can give you any advice about what you need to do, remember, focus on what you love. Because don't initially worry about the money. It will come naturally in your career if you love what you do, because the money will come later. Money will be there for you. You are the one that can control your own destiny and influence your own luck. So there's one saying my father used to tell me, and I wrote this down. Hard work is the yeast that makes the dough rise. So go out there. You can do anything that you want to do. I did it, and I'm loving it every minute. So I pinch myself every day and say, I had 33 years of a fantastic career, and I have 8 years being a private investigator and enjoying every minute of it. Thanks.
Thanks, Nancy. So one of the things we heard from Chris is that sometimes we can be launched involuntarily into entrepreneurship. Something that we hear from Nancy is that there are ways that we can take our experiences and opportunities that we have in life and monetize those, leverage those in the private sector. So as you start your careers, you might want to be thinking about what experiences you want to have that you can translate into opportunities down the road. Aaron?
Dean, you mind if I stand up?
Not at all.
Yeah. I hate sitting down and talking, guys. Good morning. Guys, you graduate or at least have finals next week, and then you have Christmas break. Good morning. My name is Aaron Slater. My story is just a little bit dirty, if we want to call it that. The reason why I say that is this, my entrepreneur career really backtracks to when I was a kid, product of a single mother with 4 boys, Chris already said ass, so I'll say ass, badass boys. And then ultimately, I can tell you this, I did have some trouble as a juvenile, to the point that I got in trouble with the law initially as a juvenile, to the degree that I moved out of my house when I was 16 years of age and I never moved back. That also resulted in me dropping out of high school, ended up getting a GED. From that point, I was kind of going down a path of, it's called life resistance, right? With that being said, a police officer came into my life, his name was Hal Clarida, came into my life and ultimately saved my life from going down that path. And we have 10 minutes to talk about it, so I'm just going to skip through this understanding of it. That man taught me what the word relentless means. No matter what you did in life, no matter what you do in life, you can continue to move forward with that. So he convinced me to become a police officer. I did. I went to the police academy, became a police officer, and I worked in every aspect of law enforcement. I did patrol. I was a training officer. I did undercover narcotics. I worked undercover narcotics for several years and a narcotics supervisor for several years. And then I worked as a sergeant and then as a lieutenant. And in my agency, that was a command position. So I commanded the patrol division. I also interim commanded the CID division, which I also worked as criminal investigations. And then ultimately, once I became a lieutenant, or once I started getting the supervisor roles, I wanted to go back to college. The reason why I wanted to go back to college was because any of you guys ever have the opportunity to supervise, I can tell you right now, a good leader wants to serve those that are under his command. So ultimately, I figured the best way to do that was to educate myself and then apply that education. So I got my undergrad in organizational leadership, and then I came right here to Sam Houston State. Why? Because it's the best damn criminal justice college in the United States. So I came back here to get my master's degree, and in fact, Dean Lyons was an instructor of mine for several classes, and I can tell you right now that he, if you haven't had the opportunity to ever sit and listen and learn from him, you missed out. He was awesome. Was awesome. Now he's just a boss, right? But overall, I can tell you that I learned a hell of a lot here. What I learned most that carried on to my entrepreneurship aspect is make relationship before you ever sell anything. Because it's the loyalty of the brand, it's the loyalty to the company that you get first. So fast forward it, as a police officer, passionate. I loved every minute of being a police officer, guys. So if that's your field, if that's what you want to do, if that's where you want to go, love it. Love it, live it. Do exactly what it is that you're here in college for. But I can tell you this also. Like Chris had mentioned, sometimes things happen in life that is unexpected. I plan on being a police officer for the rest of my career. And in the brochure, it says that I left law enforcement in 2014. That's not the case, guys. I got fired. I got fired because ultimately I went up for police chief, the assistant chief went up for police chief, he won. 3 months later, I was terminated. What did I do? I worked, again, Chris said it, my ass off for that police department. I lived it, I loved it, I was passionate about it. And for something to be ripped out from under you like that, I can tell you right now, that will put a bad taste in your mouth for anything. For anything. No matter how passionate, no matter how much love you have for that. So what did I do? I said, I want to build something now. I want to build something that nobody can take away from me. So what did I do? 7 days after I was terminated, I started ACE LLC. Initially, it was a training company, guys. You saw in the brochure, I started the Roseburg Police Department's Facebook page. It became well-renowned. It became the 4th most followed police agency page in the nation at that time. It was featured in Huffington Magazine, Time Magazine, People Magazine. We were all over Good Morning America. Any and everywhere you looked, we were there. So what did I do? I started teaching. I started teaching police departments how to use social media to better engage and connect with their communities. I can tell you this right now, that was a struggle. For 6 months, I struggled. My wife, police officer herself, she would come home every day and say, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time making this happen or trying to make this happen? I say, babe, I am not going back to law enforcement just to get something ripped out from under me again. I'm going to build something here. Well, I can tell you this, if you've ever, and you will, ever have arguments with your spouse about finances, those will rip a family apart. They will. But I can tell you, for 6 months, we struggled. And I talk about struggle where we had zero money in the bank, guys. Zero. And ultimately, in January 10th of 2015, I remember her walking in very vividly, walked in with a piece of paper in her hand and says, did you see this? I said, yeah, I was hoping you didn't. And ultimately, it was our tax bill for our house. And I'll tell you, because all I had to do is go to the CAD anyways, I owed $6,056 in taxes for my house, due at the end of January. Guys, $6,056 due at the end of January, at January 10th. You might as well said $6 million when you have no money. So of course I said, yeah, I get it. What do you want me to do? She goes, just go back to law enforcement. That's what you're good at. That's what you're great at. And I said, I can't. You don't get it. I feel, I see, I understand there's something bigger, better. But I can also tell you this right now, that was a breaking point. So, whether you're a believer or not, I can tell you right now, January 10, 2015, I prayed. And I said, here's my simple prayer. I said, God, I don't know what you want me to do. If you want me to go back to law enforcement, show me that's what you want me to do. If you want me to continue being, trying to go down this path of instructing police officers and police agencies across the nation, show me that. But something's got to give. Show me a path of where you want me to go. So what happened? January 11th, I woke up. By the way, the arguments don't stop. So what did I do? I go to my office. I lock myself in the office, put headphones on. And if you don't know me, I have like serious ADD, right? So I play loud music in order to concentrate, which is kind of odd, right? But that's what I do. I play loud music to concentrate. So what I do, I start designing something on Photoshop. And I designed what is now today the trademark logo for my brand. Well, I designed this logo, and because I was teaching Facebook and social media across the nation, I had 27 different police-themed pages in different niches. SWAT, narcotics, those types of things, all throughout. So then what I did, and I worked on this logo for about 6-7 hours, which today I could knock it out in about 3 minutes. But I did it, and I sat back and I said, hey, that's a cool logo. So what I wonder if I could do with it. I put it up, and I thought, and I said, you know what, I'm going to try something. I put it on a t-shirt, I put it on a company that's like one of these fulfillment type companies, these t-shirt fulfillment type companies, and I put it out there, and I shared it on all my pages. And then my wife and I had to go to a dinner, birthday dinner. So we left. We go eat dinner. By the way, on the way there, it's kind of like we don't talk, and we can get there, we eat dinner, everything looks great, and we get back to the car, you don't talk. Y'all understand relationships now. So, ultimately, I get back, my wife goes to her room, I go to the office. And I remember going to the office, looking at the computer, I look down, and there's 200 shirts already sold in that amount of time. And I thought I messed up. I thought something went wrong. So I started going to all the posts, checking the engagement. I see all the comments. Bought one, just bought one, just bought one, just bought one. So I kept pushing, I kept pushing for 1 week. 1 week. At the end of that 7 days, I remember walking into my master bathroom and my wife sitting there straightening her hair or curling it, whichever one she decided to do it. And I walked in and I said, hey babe, I got the money for this house. And I remember her stopping, putting the curling iron down on the sink. She turns to me, mind you, I used to work narcotics, and like Dean Lyons had just mentioned, it's kind of hard for a police officer sometimes to wrap their head around entrepreneurship, because our paycheck comes every day or every other week with company. So she turns around and says, what the hell are you doing? And I could see in her eyes and see in her reaction that I knew what she thought was going on here. So I said, come here, I'm going to show you. So I walked her into my office, I showed her a computer, I said, look. I said, there it is. And she goes, what is this, some kind of pyramid scheme? She didn't know what a pyramid scheme is. You're a damn detective. And she says, I don't know, she walks out. She didn't understand. Well, I can tell you this right now, that in 7 days' time, I owed $6,056 in my property tax. I made $6,058. And I'll tell you what I learned and what I got from that message, what I got from that understanding, is in this aspect of the path, is provide. I'll give you more than you need, but do something great for the rest. Do something great with it. So I can tell you what I've done. I pushed it, and I pushed it. And in 3 months' time, I made over $300,000. I took that money, I created my brand, I TM'd it, I registered it, and ended up buying a building, buying all the equipment, and now I have a complete self-sufficient e-commerce clothing brand that now I have 14 employees, and we make multi-millions of dollars per year. And I'll say this, that guys, people will say all the time, people that know me, people have known me for many years, they start to say, dude, you lucked out. And I'll tell you this right now. I'm blessed, yes, by far. But on top of that, I can tell you, I equate it to 50% of two things. One, unanswered reasons and unanswered things, but two, more so as far as our understanding of things. You have got to work your ass off. I work 80 hours, so now I prevent from working 40 for somebody else. And I can tell you, that's what entrepreneurs love to do. We love the idea of freedom. We love the idea of liberation. We love the idea of being able to come up here in blue jeans, tennis shoes, and a t-shirt and give a speech. We love the idea of really that everything that you do and everything that you put into it, it's yours. Nobody can take it away from it except for your failure. And I'll tell you this, to end it, I don't care what has ever happened in your life or what will happen in your life. There will be obstacles. And those obstacles, you need to look at, smile, and say, that's cute. But you go over them, around them, under them, or right through them, but you do what I was taught at a young age, and be relentless. Thank you, guys.
Well, Aaron, I knew that you had been successful. I didn't realize it was that successful. The good news is we won't be talking about scholarships. The bad news is we'll be talking about naming a building. So.
We'll talk about scholarships first.
Well, again, I think a different lesson that we have from Aaron, in his case, it wasn't so much capitalizing on the experiences that he had, it was rather surfacing some inborn talent and entrepreneurial orientation that he had. I did remember one other thing I wanted to mention about Nancy. When you see those warnings about videos, copyright infringement, and you might get arrested, now you know someone who actually does that. So those are not hollow threats. At this point, I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions that you might have of any of our speakers.
Right.
Yes.
How important was it to each one of you to have like a support system?
The question was, how important was a support system for the successes that each of you had?
You mean a support staff or a home support system or in general? So, I'll go first. For me, having a supportive family, whenever I branched out into doing something that a lot of people consider to be goofy ideas, it was very important that my wife was always supportive every time I came up with some new idea that I wanted to jump into without a lot of thought. So that was really important. When you're starting a new business, when I started the first law firm, it was, involuntary, and we had literally 3 lawyers and one secretary. And so that was being involuntary and having, I think we had, between the 3 of us, we had $5,000 in the bank. And so that was just kind of by fire, and we had to scramble to stay open. The second time I did it, I was a little bit better off. And so having a support staff around you when you're starting a business is important. But when you're starting a new business, you can very quickly hire a support staff that puts you into bankruptcy, and you have to watch what you're doing, I think, because if you hire too many people, in other words, I need this number of staff, and now you've got your overhead so high, but you haven't got your income stream coming in, and so you can't afford to pay the staff you need. You've staffed up for a full level, but you don't have an income stream to keep them. And so it's a careful balance, I think, until you get the income stream coming in before you ramp everybody up. So it's important, but it's important to balance until the income stream is there.
Support, absolutely very important. But fortunate for me is that when I started my PI business, my husband also was a retired federal agent. So when I needed assistance on surveillance or anything else I was doing, I called him. And I knew I could trust him. But overall is that I don't have clerical staff because I do all of that myself. And yeah, that's a burden, and it's something you got to watch out for. And also, it's you got to worry about your finances. Just like Chris was saying, is that if you're going to hire a bunch of support staff, then you're just going to cut right into your profit margin. So I think that, especially when you're first starting, you'll need to do all of that yourself. And then as you grow and get bigger, like Aaron is saying, he's probably got a huge support staff. But overall, I say for me, it was just a matter of my family. My family supported it and believed in me. And that's why I've been pretty successful in what I've been doing.
Yeah, and I'll feed off of what they have already said, with the exception of, I will say this, from my law enforcement background, I'm also a believer in never delegate your safety to somebody else. So I took that understanding and moved it into entrepreneurship as well, and understand that no matter how much support you have as a business owner, you are the captain of the ship.
Right.
And ultimately, Nobody, I don't care, my wife works for me, my sister-in-law works for me, and I can say this right now, even though no matter how close you keep people to you, nobody cares about your business and your passion more than you. I will also say, as far as the hiring aspect of things, you hire in entrepreneurship a little bit different than you hire in government. In government, where I used to do hiring as well, you hire to fill a hole. You hire because somebody gave you a space to put somebody. In entrepreneurship and in business ownership, you hire to relieve the captain's stress. So if there's something that's causing you stress as an entrepreneur, you hire to help relieve that stress. And I will also tell you, it works on the flip side of things a little bit better in business than it does in government as well. And the idea of this, if somebody in your staff is causing you stress on a daily basis, you no longer need that person.
That's right. And you learn very quickly when you're running your own business what how much you really need a big staff when you get the health insurance bill for $200,000 a year and the other things that it costs to run a business. You know, we have 4 lawyers and support staff, and we spend over $200,000 a year just to buy health insurance for our small firm and things like that. But we want them to have health insurance. So, but that $200,000 a year comes out of me and my partner's pocket, and that's money that we could be taking home and putting in our pocket. And so, you have to decide what you want to do and how you want to be as an employer. And so, you make your staff as big as you want and how big your heart is.
Other questions?
Thank you. What advice would you give for somebody who is thinking about going to either a lawyer profession or to law enforcement agencies for applying and starting the career there?
Say it one more time.
What advice would you give for someone who's either going to law school to become a lawyer or either working as a law enforcement officer?
Well, the first advice I would give if you want to be a lawyer is pay attention to what you're doing in college grade-wise, because law school now is an extremely competitive place to get into. And when I went to law school, fortunately, it wasn't as competitive as it is now, because it took me a long time in college to get focused on earning grades. And so when I got ready to go to law school, my GPA was probably not, is it still sealed? It probably wasn't the highest. It could have been.
We've got it right.
And so if you're not paying attention, you have to do so much better on the LSAT, and it makes it very, very difficult to get in. So you need to not pay attention to the frat and pay more attention to the studying. I don't think that, and what I tell young people all the time is, I don't think that you need to go into political. I went to political science because I love it. And that's what you need to do, is study what you love, because you'll do better at it. It doesn't matter what you get your degree in. Just get a degree. So study what you really like, because you'll do better at that, and then you're better served. Law schools don't look at your degree and say, well, you got a degree in this, we don't need you. They don't care. They want your grades to be high and your LSAT to be high enough to meet that what they're looking for in a student, okay? And so study what you want, study hard, stay out of the bars, and get a high GPA, okay? That's what they're looking for. And the law enforcement side, to me, and I was never in law enforcement, they're probably better at that, but I think it's the same thing, okay? That what we're looking for is people who know how to think and know how to think on their feet. You know, what I'm doing in the courtroom is and what they're teaching me in law school is how to think on my feet and think rationally and think from all sides of an issue. And I don't think that's any different than a law enforcement officer who is on the street who has to think from all sides of an issue very quickly, just like I do in the courtroom. The only difference is they might get shot, all right, and I'm not. And so the stakes are a lot higher, but I'm making a lot more money, And then, and so I think that if you're going into law enforcement, the skill set is no different from an education standpoint other than the defensive mechanisms. Am I wrong about that?
I'll add to that, and I'll say that as far as the law enforcement side, I won't speak on the attorney side because the devil. But I'm joking. I love a lot of defense attorneys. Trust me, not all of them, but a lot of them. But I will say this: as law enforcement goes, to make it very simple, more so than anything, I'm a big believer in the understanding of a pyramid: mind, body, and soul. Right? You're here to enrich your mind. You're here to advance your career, advance your mindset. Law enforcement also needs fitness, which is the body. But the aspect of the soul is the most important overall. Because if you're smart, you have good moral character and a good ethic background and that type of thing, you can be a good cop, even if you're out of shape. If you have, if you got a PhD and you're brilliant, and you've got good moral character, and you've got good personality, those types of things for this job, you'll be a good cop. But if you have a PhD and you are a fitness guru, right? And those are the two things you got, but you don't have the moral character, I can tell you right now.
You're going to need me.
That's right. So the bottom line is when it comes down to it, your character. Your character is the most important thing as far as being a law enforcement officer. And I'll tell you what separates the greatness of policing, of police officers, from those that go into this and making the job is selfless. If you can be selfless in everything that you do, and you sit there and you ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? It's for a selfless reason, because it's not for money. If you're doing it because it's selfless, you'll be successful. And also, if I could wrap up the idea of leadership, because that's what law enforcement is supposed to be, is leadership within a community, right? In one word, that would be selfless.
I would say that if you wanted to become a federal agent, realize that when you apply for a job and they hire you or they're pending hiring you, you will be going through a background investigation. And that background investigation occurs even after you are hired every 5 years for security clearances. If you can't get a security clearance, you can't have a job. And security clearances include not only your background on what you do socially, what you do professionally, what are your finances. So if you are filing bankruptcies and you have credit card problems and all issues of that, that's going to come up on your security clearance, because the whole point of a security clearance is that can you be compromised? Because if you will become a federal agent, you are handling secrets of the government. And so that's why they look into that background. And integrity, as Aaron has said, is paramount. So a good way to look at integrity is what I call is how you behave when nobody is watching. And so your answer to your question, if you wanted to be in the federal arena, is that realize is that what you do now is important. Your grades are very relevant to what you can do and what money you can make and what grade structure you can enter into the government. Is that if you have great grades, academic high grades, you will be bumped up to a higher grade upon entry versus someone who has lower grades, and which I happen to graduate with academic honors. And so I could have been hired at a higher grade, but my boss did not enter me at that higher level, which I guess I lost out. I lost out on that one, but it happens.
You know, I mean, that's such a good point that you're making, Nancy. If you have pictures on your Facebook page or your Instagram or whatever social media you happen to be posting pictures of you drinking alcohol or smoking pot or doing other illegal things, you are shutting yourself out of a lot of jobs, okay? The people who are hiring you look just like me, all right? And I can assure you that I don't want anybody working for me who's smoking pot, okay? And so if you got a picture on your Facebook page of you with pot, I'm not hiring you, even if it's legal. I don't want you. So if you're putting that on your Facebook page because you think it's cool or funny, you just shut yourself out of a lot of jobs. And I can assure you the United States government is not going to hire you if you have pictures like that on your Facebook page. You can look at my Facebook page, like Dr. Lyons said, it's very prolific, and there's a whole lot of pictures of me on the internet, a whole lot because of my career. You will never find a picture of me with an alcoholic beverage in my hand. I will not allow it to be taken. I'm not saying I don't drink. I participate in imbibing every now and then. I've done it here at this university. When I was the president of the Student Government Association, we held an election and it was passed, and we opened 2 bars on this campus while I was the president of the Student Government Association. I understand they took that away and no one erected a plaque in my honor when we did that, and that's a shame. But I'm not saying don't drink. I'm saying do not allow pictures to be taken of you, and don't post pictures of yourself on your own Facebook pages that will come back to haunt you. Because if you want to do jobs in government and for the federal government, don't cut off your nose to spite your face by putting up pictures that employers will not hire you for.
Well, Chris, I always knew you were a champion of the bar, but I didn't know it extended.
I never passed a bar.
Well, that's all we have time for. I appreciate everyone's participation. We have to move out fairly quickly. What we'd like to do, not like fire quickly or anything. We'd like those of you who are not in Dr. Azimi's class to exit to the lobby. We have a stand and repeat. There will be an opportunity for you to have photographs taken without alcoholic beverages with our panelists and continue the conversation there. We thank you for your participation.